So, once upon a time, there was the carrier, and it was pretty strong and dangerous. Recently the carrier was buffed, and now it is a very, very, very strong unit. So, with the carrier buff, and then the recent Hydra nerf, how do you beat a Skytoss Protoss player? The opening build is kind of way before you would be able to find out whether it was Skytoss. So I go hatch gas pool, check for a cannon rush, take my third base. Making lots of queens and pulling off of gas. So my defensive tools early on are speedlings and queens. I'm making queens one at a time so that I can spend all of my larvae into drones. Drone production is the most important thing to focus on at this stage of the game. I kept an overlord here so I can see any units moving out across the map. I don't really want to go over here to scout the wall off situation. I already pathed an overlord here to check for proxy, and I don't want to lose this to a stalker. I'd rather keep it alive and scout the timing of a third base or see a bunch of adepts moving across the map. So the pathing of my second overlord was from my main out past the natural over the grass to check for proxy, and then took an angle over here to fly directly into the Protoss main base. So Lings and Queen deal with that first adept. Lay a creep tumor, should be injecting. And I'm still spending everything into drones and queens, with the exception of a few zerglings. You can think about any research, any tech that you put into the game, maybe trying to leverage that value a little bit. So the speed zergling is the fastest unit in the game, so I made a few speed zerglings just to poke the front and see if I can get any easy information right here, while this overlord flies in and gets this read. So I get a scout of chrono boosted Twilight business. This could be adept, it could be zealots. Based on the adepts I've seen, it's probably glaives. And then I'm flying over here. One mindset thing with overlords, you want to think of overlords as a pay to remove unit, where Protoss has to invest something to be able to take this out, rather than that you should be scared of losing your overlords necessarily. So I see the adepts with this overlord, and I'm making lings. Lings can actually chase adepts. Roaches trade better in a direct engagement, but before roach speed is done, you can't really chase them down and take them out. So I'm trying to clean this up with lings and roaches. Still making queens. Just rallying a few roaches to each Sporature base is a really nice way to have a clean defense against adepts. So I didn't take too much damage. Let's see what the units tab looks like. I'm actually behind in workers right now. So since I made a bunch of army, it may have been a mistake to do that, but might as well move across the map and see if you can get some work done with it. So I think, yeah, they'll cancel that. This is another way of just keeping your macro at home really safe. If you make an army, for whatever reason, do something with it. You've employed some troops, go and accomplish an objective. You don't necessarily need to win the game or crush them or kill a base to shape the game by attacking with your army. So Roachling army is pretty bad. It's low DPS, it doesn't really have a lot going on, but it does pull the Protoss players' attention to their side of the map, and it pulls all these adepts back home, which means I can drone freely, I can make queens, I can take my fourth base and all my gases, and everything is just really peaceful on my side of the map. So here I get the first read that it's Skytoss. I see 2 Stargates, which is a pretty heavy investment. You should have at least 2 spores per base, kind of formed like this. And I'll make another one at this base too. Phoenixes are really bad at denying bases and also denying creep. So I put a forward overlord here to drop creep, so a forward queen could put some tumors. Losing overlords is a bit of a bummer, but it's not game ending. I want to take overlord speed to try and keep as many of those alive as I can, and then dropping a Hydra Den and an infestation pit at the same time. So this is kind of a new strategy I've been working on against Skytoss. Because carriers are stronger than before, instead of thinking about hitting a Queen Hydra timing to try and kill them, Swarmhost is a way of creating a mobile threat in any of their bases, and nydus is the transportation mechanism to get them from one place to another. So generally, once a Skytoss player starts making carriers, which they're making 3 carries at a time, they also start making a bunch of cannons at the base where they expect to be attacked. This is their low ground forward base. Any direct army attack is going to come in this area. So where's the Protoss not defending their bases? This natural doesn't have a single defensive structure in it aside from the overcharged pylon. The main base also doesn't have anything except for what units might come out and overcharged pylons. So attack where he is unprepared, sally out where he does not expect you. This is Sun Tzu shit. It's really old in principle that you should not attack where the opponent is concentrated, you should attack elsewhere. So one task for you is figuring out what is a cost-efficient and effective tool that Zerg can use to attack where the opponent is not prepared. Mutalisk, kind of a bad option because there are already Phoenixes in the game and they can make 3 Phoenixes at a time. The Fleet Beacon is already done. What about Lurkers? Lurkers are kind of a cool option. They cost a lot more gas than Swarmhosts do, and you basically commit them to die because they can't very easily deal damage and then retreat. They get unburrowed and they become very exposed. With Swarmhosts, you can nydus them in, unload the Locusts, deal some damage, and then get back in before you lose a single Swarmhost. And then the main army is composed of Queens, Roaches, those are just left over, and then Hydras. Hydras with upgrades. So, here's a question. How many Swarmhosts is a good amount to make? I'm still trying to figure out this amount in my strategies, but 11 Swarmhosts I use this game. It seemed to get the job done, pretty much. You could also try 15. When I've made 7 to 8 Swarmhosts, it doesn't seem like enough to be able to kill crucial structures by the time the opponent gets their defense in place. A Skytoss player, really any turtley player who's trying to build a strong army, wants to have all of their army in one point. They want to defend one location, and they want to make sure their units stay together. Carriers are really strong if they're in a group, but they're pretty weak just on their own. So an attack like the Swarmhost is one that's really likely to pull their attention and pull their army away from their new base. Another principle, it's always going to be easiest to kill a base as it's being established rather than after it's been fully established. Taking some losses here, falling back, but I'm pretty happy about the damage these Swarmhosts have dealt. Getting lots of worker kills done. Notice how bad Phoenixes are against the Locusts. They're temporary units anyway, and picking up 1 Locust at a time doesn't really do anything. I haven't really been trying to focus the carriers. Mainly I'm just killing interceptors, so the cost of the interceptor was reduced, but one of the nice things about killing these interceptors is I know that my Swarmhosts are dealing damage to kill the Protoss economy, so it is still pretty impactful to kill these interceptors and just lower the DPS of the army, force them to remake more mineral units. There's also really good psychological value in the sound of a nydus going off. It just makes the opponent concerned. Where is the nydus? What's coming out of the nydus? Do I have things in place? What's going on? Just a very broad sense of unease and confusion, which lets you just macro safely. You can remake army, you can tech up to the next piece. So here I'm going for chitinous ultras to tank a lot of the interceptor shots. I'm taking another carapace upgrade. Carapace upgrades for your ground are really good if you're having a ground-based army against carrier, because the ground armor is applied every time a unit hits your ground units. And interceptors attack very fast, so you get lots and lots of value for carapace upgrades, potentially even more than you would from attack upgrades. I have a little bit of a spore wall here at the forward base. It's the same principle as the Protoss having a bunch of cannons at their forward third, and then eventually at the 4th base. Having several overseers with your army is wise. You should expect to lose a few in the main engagements, and if they have a mothership and you lose your overseers, you're kind of out of luck. unless you can kill the mothership. Here I made a nydus that's forward so that my queens can spread creep, and also so I can just add the Swarmhost to the main fight if I want to. They can tank a little bit of damage, and then the Locust can deal a bit of damage as well. But I really like this style against the new version of Skytoss, the stronger carriers, and so forth. Hydras are faster now. They geared back the range, so it's the same as it used to be. But really the Swarmhost and the nydus is the win condition against Skytoss. Main army is just a formality. Yeah, Juno points out another alternative follow-up composition. Instead of going Ultra Hydra Queen, Corruptor Spore is also viable. What do you think about drops? So the reason I don't like drops as much is because the Phoenixes are really good at killing Overlords. Overseers are really fast, and all you need to do is get vision in their base for a very small window of time to establish the nydus network.